Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's very good to see you all here, whether you're in the room or out in the digital universe on this Shabbat. Welcome to Congregation Sherith Israel. I'm Rabbi Abby Phelps, and I am joined on the bima by Cantor Toby Glaser, and also Omri Gal-Oz at the piano. And we're all really pleased to try to settle into this Shabbat moment that, thank God, comes every week and gives us an opportunity every week, no matter what the events of the week, to pause and reflect and rest and find comfort in the company of one another. So thank you so much for joining us and being part of that community today. I want to invite up someone to offer an additional greeting to the congregation. Christina Jefferson, one of our board members, is going to come up and offer some words of greeting, and then we'll light the Shabbat candles.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's been a while since I've been up here. And last Friday, I was in Jerusalem experiencing this with people I didn't know, with people who are, from all over the world. But eventually, because there were no transliteration in the book, I figured out where I was because of L'chad Odi, so I was really pumped. But it just reminded me of community and how community is so important. And so in this moment, when it's a holiday weekend and there's not a lot of us in this space, hopefully there's some of you out there, I hope we remember how important this community is and how important all of our communities are to staying in this moment. So, Shabbat Shalom.
Are you going to sing for us, Christina? All right. Mazel tov. Yeshakach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
As Christina mentioned, no matter where you are or how confused you are in a service or what you're up to, you can always tell when we reach L'chad Odi, because whatever setting is used, it's always something that is melodious and joyous and reminds us of the importance of enthusiastically greeting Shabbat as our beloved who visits us each week. So I invite you to join us in singing L'chad Odi, which you can find on page 20.
This is
Certainly a melodious and joyous setting by Aaron Ben-Susan. We haven't done it in a little while.
Ah, cool.
לך אדוני לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשמו תפארת ולתהילה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה. סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה. תתעוררי, תתעוררי, כי באורך קומי. אורי, 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 שאדברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה. תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Having welcomed Shabbat into our midst, we remain standing and call one another formally to prayer with the Baruch on page 28.
Ya da da ya da 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 da, ya da da ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da da ya da 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 da, ya da da ya da 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 da, ya da da ya da 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 da, ya da 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 ya da, ya da da ya da da da. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. ya dai dai ya dai 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 dai, ya dai dai ya dai 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 dai, ya dai 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 dai, ya dai dai ya dai 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 dai, ya dai dai ya dai 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 dai, ya dai dai ya dai 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 dai, ya dai 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 dai, ya dai dai ya dai 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 dai.
This hour, as the light in our beautiful windows begins to fade, we recognize the beauty and the wisdom of the cycles of life, of day and night that we see every day. Please join me in reading the English at the top of page 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Continue with Ahavat Olam on page 32.
Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Avta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al ken Adonai Eloheinu B'shokbeinu v'kumeinu Nasiach b'chukecha V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha U'v'mitzvotecha Le'olam va'ed Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu Uvahem negeh yomam v'layla Ve'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha Bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha ubechol meodecha Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele Asher anochi netzavecha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levanecha vedibarta bam B'shivtecha b'veitecha uvelechtecha v'aderech ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Please join me in reading the English at the bottom of page 39. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
מי כמוך בעלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים, אנו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. יאי די די ידי די 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 ידי די 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 ידי די 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 ידי די 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 ידי די 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 ידי די 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 ידי די 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 ידי די 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 Yada dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai.
This room always inspires me to meditate on the meaning of Hashkivenu, on the idea that we are protected by so many different structures around us, our homes, this beautiful dome, and our relationships with one another, and of course, our relationship with God, who extends over us a sukkah of shalom, a shelter of peace, which we give thanks for in Hashkivenu. Please join us on page 42.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. Amen. Shelter us beneath your wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us daily wrong from right.
As we transition from praying for peace to praying for healing with Misha Berach, I have to say this is one of those Shabbatot where peace and healing feel a little urgent, but also a little elusive. I was realizing today that I was a senior in high school when the Columbine massacre took place. And I remember being shocked that such horrific violence could be perpetrated essentially by children against children. But I could never have imagined how commonplace such events would become. In the wake of the most recent mass shootings in Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas, let alone the dozens of people who die unreported from gun violence every day in the US, it is easy to feel stymied, overwhelmed by grief and fear and anger, and at a loss for words. To an extent, there are no words. But at the same time, there are so many words that need to be said. I'm struck by the similarities between these two recent shootings. In both cases, the shooters used similar AR-15 rifles that they had purchased legally. Both alleged killers were young men, just 18 years old, and both are reported to have had histories of abusing animals and threatening violence. Both targeted communities of color, communities which regularly bear the brunt of gun violence in the US. In the words of Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II, paraphrasing the prophet Amos, "The tears of our pain from all this death must be united into a lament that invokes the assistance of God and makes possible the kind of change where justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. The least we can do is to demand common sense gun safety measures, like ensuring that background checks, licensing, and training for would-be gun owners are at least as rigorous as for automobile drivers. We must also recognize and address the worsening epidemic of youth mental illness in this country, so that we might attempt to intervene before more young men turn to violence as an outlet for anger and alienation. But for right now, those and so many other essential tasks are 25 hours away. For now, it is Shabbat. It is the time for us to come together for healing, to seek comfort in community. And so we pray tonight for the healing of all those affected by gun violence, as well as all those in our lives who are in need of healing for any reason, whether it be healing of mind, body, or spirit. I'll read some names of people in this community to whom we wish healing on the Shabbat, partway through our prayer. Please join us in Misha Berach on page 373.
Mekor habracha le'imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
On this Shabbat, we think for healing of Tzur Miriam bat Hana v'Moshe, Aharon ben Tzvi, Jim Blattner, Bob Fonero, Jeremy Frick, William Kurian, Agnes Rothblatt, Gail Seiler, Dr. Eric Tabus, and Shell Wolf. And to those names, we add any names that you wish to share aloud at this time. We continue on page 253.
Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We can always tell when there are members of the choir in the congregation because we get a little bit of beautiful harmony on Misha Berach. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you for adding that extra note of beauty to our much-needed prayer for healing. Now we'll rise once more in preparation for the Amidah, our standing prayer. We begin on page 46 with Adonai Sefatai.
Yadadai dai dai, 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 yadadai dai dai. Adonai Sefatai tiftach, Ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Yadadai dai dai, 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 yadadai dai dai. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, ve'Konei Hakol, ve'Zocher Chasdei Avot ve'Imaot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה רב להושיע. מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, וחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני וחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Please take a few moments now for silent prayer. When you have finished your prayers, you may be seated.
נחמו, נחמו, עמי יאמר אלוהיכם. 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 Comfort us in our wilderness. Comfort us as we struggle to take care of one another. Comfort us in our wilderness. Comfort us as we struggle with this world. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yomar Elohechem. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yomar Elohechem. Comfort us in our wilderness. Comfort us as we struggle to take care of one another. Comfort us in our wilderness. Comfort us as we struggle with this world. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yomar Elohechem. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yomar Elohechem. Shabbat Shalom. This evening I was going to discuss a beloved Shabbat psalm, Psalm 92, and yet I felt compelled to rewrite things a little bit in light of this week's events and at least try and offer some kind of space for us to grieve and console together on what has become a heavy Shabbat full of sorrow. Our parsha this week is Bechukotai, or laws or statutes, which seems fitting. A central theme of Bechukotai is the concept of tochacha, or terrible punishment. Tochacha is the idea that if God's commandments are not kept, there will be vengeance visited on the Israelites, so as to make them accountable for their lack of observance. This pattern can be seen through the early legislation in many Near Eastern cultures. It's a feature of the Code of Hammurabi and the older Sumerian Code of Lipit Ishar. Gunter Plaut writes that these codes begin by telling how the laws were promulgated, and the legal section is followed by the promise of blessings for those who obey these laws, and by curses on those who falsify the text or violate its provisions. Just so, the various legal documents of the Torah are each introduced by an account of the Exodus and the revelation at Sinai, and conclude with this tochacha, or this reproof. The fact that these blessings and curses occur in earlier documents show a pattern which is not uniquely Jewish. However, our contemporary reading of Torah does show a uniquely Jewish idea. That's the discomfort with these curses that are visited on the Israelites on the display in a public arena when we read from these particular parshiot. Plaut continues, the public reading of these threatening passages caused great uneasiness in former generations. Ordinarily, it is an honor to be called up to recite the Torah benedictions, but people avoided the privilege of being called up on the Sabbaths when the curses were read from Leviticus and Deuteronomy. The 7 subsections into which the weekly Torah portion is divided, and for each of which a worshipper comes forward in the traditional synagogue to pronounce the blessings, are usually about equal length. They rarely extend over more than 25 verses. But the curses in Leviticus and Deuteronomy are traditionally read without interruption. This arrangement served a double purpose. The disturbing passage could be completed as quickly as possible, and only one reluctant worshipper had to be persuaded to say the benedictions. This irony that these uncomfortable verses could be glossed over or read quickly due to their negative and ugly nature is not lost on me. Here I am on the last Shabbat of the month, when we would usually have a sermon in song, wanting to simply speak on our psalm for Shabbat, our Mizmor Shir, and yet I feel that the words will ring hollow in this sacred space if I do not speak on the curses which have befallen our community this week. This idea of tochacha, that somehow curses will rain down on us if we do not obey God's commandments, seems simplistic and uncomfortable for our Reformed Jewish sensibilities. And yet here we are facing again the murder of children within a house of learning. And we can indeed see that human inaction breeds human curses. There were 2 pieces of major legislation passed by the House last year, which are sitting in the Senate. The first of these is the Enhanced Background Checks Act of 2021, and the second is the Bipartisan Background Checks Act of 2021. I encourage you to learn more about these acts and to pressure lawmakers to pass this meaningful legislation to combat the gun violence plaguing this nation. What more can we say about this violence? Despite wanting to offer some kind of melodies or words of comfort for the community, one story has stuck in my mind from my initial preparation for the sermon this week. It's a story which comes to us from Dehur Rabelov, or the Maharal, the great Maharal of Prague, and why a certain psalm, the 92nd psalm, our Mizmor Shir, to which I wanted to speak, was repeated in evening services. Legend has it that the Maharal used his golem, the famous golem of Prague, as a faithful servant on weekdays, and extracted God's name from its mouth on Shabbat so it could rest. One night, after reciting Psalm 92, he somehow forgot about his creation, and the golem started raging through the streets of Prague. He quickly ran outside and extracted the holy name from its mouth, and the golem fell to pieces. He then ran back to the synagogue and repeated the psalm, which is a custom that is still repeated to this day. There are those in American society who wish to view guns as golems. They feel that guns are here to do our bidding, to be our faithful servants when we require them, and to act as deterrence and protection, just like the golem of Jewish folklore. Nevertheless, even the Maharal, one of the holiest rabbis and greatest teachers who ever lived, was unable to halt his golem from causing destruction to the city of Prague. Through carelessness, his golem raged, and through carelessness, these weapons rage and cause death and destruction in our own communities. I would suggest that guns are not golems or faultless tools which are morally neutral, but rather that they themselves are part of the tochacha, of the curses which occur when we fail to react to the pain and grief of our society. This is not about God. My theology is a belief in the infinite love of God, but the logic of tochacha, of deeply human blessing and curse, and that we are collectively responsible for the ills of society, cannot be ignored. There are also those who wish to gloss over these sections of history, as we do with our tochacha sections of Torah. The curses make them uncomfortable. Many of our leaders are already dismissing these deaths, negating their impact, or trying to place the blame firmly on the shooter without looking at practical ways that legislation in the Senate could improve children's safety and stop evil people from obtaining weapons in the first place. We cannot simply avoid these uncomfortable sections, as we do with the curses of the Torah, but instead must face them head on. I would like to leave us with these holy words of Psalm 92, our psalm for Shabbat, in a setting by Louis Lewandowski, known as Tzadik Katamar. These last verses of this psalm refer to righteousness which rises like a palm tree. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs writes of these verses, Shabbat is not merely a day of rest. It is a rehearsal within time for the age beyond time, when humanity, guided by the call of God, moves beyond strife, evil, and oppression to create a world of harmony, respecting the integrity of creation as God's work and the human person as God's image. At that time, people looking back at history will see that though evil flourished like grass, it was short-lived, while the righteous grow slowly but stand tall like the cedar of Lebanon. May we bring ourselves closer to this time of peace and harmony through our own actions and those of our leaders, and continue to grow these trees of righteousness in our own communities. Shabbat Shalom. Tzadik Katamar Yifra Keres Balvanon Hisge Shetolim Bevet Adonai Bechatzrot Eloheinu Yafrihu Odinu Ovun Beseva Deshenim Verananim Yiyon Lehagir Ki Ashar Adonai Suri velo
inspiring words and your beautiful music. I love that piece, Tzadik Katamar, and the words of it are just as beautiful as the music. In English, the righteous bloom like a date palm, they thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in the courts of our God. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that God is upright, my rock, in whom there is no wrong.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good things to be reminded of. Speaking of good things to be reminded of, even when things are difficult, even when we struggle to find the security or the joy that we want to find on Shabbat, we still do that work to try to find it, and we still need to recognize that for many of us, there are wonderful things that have happened in the last week, in the last month, in the last year, joyous occasions, simchas of all sorts. So if anyone is celebrating a particular simcha, a joyous occasion on this Shabbat, I invite you to let us all share that joy with you by telling us all about it. Does anybody have a simcha they'd like to share? David does. Please, David Perlstein.
Last weekend, my wife Karen and I went down to Los Angeles. We helped our son, who is taking a summer course at Pasadena Community College, fulfill an anthropology requirement, doing a project on ethnic food. And so Yossi made my mother's and Carolyn's recipe for potato kugel. It was fantastic. He interviewed us for the video, we got notes for his paper and so forth. And it really was a great experience, and that recipe goes back to his great-great-grandmother, Shifra Horowitz, on my mother's side, and it's nice to see it passed all the way down. And let me tell you something, it really was as good as my mother's and Carolyn's.
I love it. Thank you, David. I had seen the title of your blog post this week, and I had seen it was about potato kugel, at least in part, but I hadn't had the chance to read it yet. So now I know what is in store for me when I get to read it. And now I want some potato kugel. Does anyone else have a simcha they'd like to share? Yeah, please, Lisa, go ahead. The Warriors won the Western Conference. Very nice. I'm sure many people who understand sports better than I do are real happy about that. Are there other folks who have simchas they'd like to share? Anybody doing anything particularly cool for Memorial Day weekend? Just curious. I am not. Although I did once have a fabulous Memorial Day weekend where I drove overnight from San Francisco up to Portland. It's a long night of driving. I had a friend, and then we drove to the coast, and then we spent 3 days coming down the coast and camping, and it was fabulous. So if you have the freedom to do things like that and you never have, I strongly encourage you to do it sometime on a weekend like this. Well, in honor of the simchas that have been mentioned, and whatever other joyous things await us in the days and weeks ahead, I want to invite us all to rise and join together in the Shehechianu blessing, thanking God for arriving at this moment.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Amen.
And now we'll remain standing as we turn to the Elenu, the prayer in which we are reminded that we have agency, that we have the obligation and the power to bring about the perfected world that we all want to see. Please join us on page 282.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גלולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. If you are in a period of Shiva, of the first 7 days of mourning, I invite you to rise and share your loved one's name with us. For Shloshim, for the first 30 days of mourning on the Shabbat, we remember Tina T.J. Feldman, Mary Gorman, and Carolyn Reznikoff. If you are in a period of Shloshim for someone whose name I have not read, please rise. And if you are in the first year of mourning for a loved one, please rise and share their name with us. The perpetual memorials in our community are Ingrid Apter, Shoshana Chana Asher, Judy Migdale, Leon Mervis, Joseph Sattler, Harold Weiss, and Joanne May Weiss. We also observe the following yahrzeits on the Shabbat. We remember David Allen, Ruth Bartfeld, Lillian Teal Black, Barry Collier, David Curiel, Nathan Harris David, Jesse Frank, Adolph Green, Stanley Heisler, Axel Jahan, Al Karasik, Elsie Karliner, Julia Gottlieb Kluger, Dr. Leon Kolb, Mark Lazor, Charles Lehrer, Rose H. Libman, Norman Nadler, Sarah Krakow Neustadt, Dr. Kim Storch, Sidney Tabus, Roxanne Tolliver, Shem Ulysses Tzipor, and Jane Porter Zurkowski. To those names, we add the names of any loved ones whom you wish to recognize on the Shabbat. Please feel free to rise and share a name with us. Now we rise as one community in solidarity with our mourners and join together in the Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Yit gadal v'yit kadash me rabbah, be'alma divra chiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayeh dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chaim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, alenu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru, amen. May the one who creates peace on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all the world. Together we say, amen. You may be seated. We have just a few announcements to share before we move into the conclusion of our service. We have Torah study tomorrow morning on Zoom, as usual, at 9:15. That will be with me. We also, if you have a child 5 or younger in your life, we have an event just for them. We have Tat Shabbat coming up next Friday, June 3rd at 5 p.m. right here. So if you have such a little person, please bring them with you to that. We will also simultaneously in the chapel have a little Yizkor service at 5:30, I believe.
I also believe.
Yes, we both believe. We're not 100% sure, so check your emails.
I think it's 5:30. Yes.
Yes.
I think Tot Shabbat is 5 and Yizkor is 5:30.
I think that's
yes.
right. Yeah. Sad to say, we have a farewell event for me coming up on Saturday, June 4th. If you are a fan of cheesy food, then you will enjoy it because we are celebrating both Shavuot and moving to Wisconsin with lots of cheese. Also,
There will be lactate on. There will be on tap, basically.
Well,
we've been told it will be at the tables.
There will be floral arrangements with lactate attached to them, is what I'm told. So get excited for that. I'm also told, and I can't make a promise, but I'm told that some teens might be doing a skit of some kind. So I think lots of reasons to come. So please come celebrate with me if you can. And then right after that, we have a Shavuot event that's a joint event with Emmanuel and Shar Zahav. It's at Manny's in the Mission?
No, sorry. It was moved online late
Oh.
last week. So I believe that
I will
there
let
will
the
be...
cantor talk.
I believe that I also only heard late last week. I believe that we will include it in Under the Dome. There will be a link for that, but it is still happening, but it will be moving online
Okay.
due to health concerns, I believe.
Understandably.
Which don't apply to Rabbi Abby's celebration, and you should all definitely be there.
Yes, everybody just stay real healthy and then please come. So there will be a celebration, though, of Shavuot that you can participate in online. And there are many other things coming to pass. Yes, I have somebody who would like to make an announcement. Do you want to come up and say a few words? So I'll just preface quickly that the RAC California, the Religious Action Center for Reform Judaism, which is sort of the political lobbying arm of the Reform movement, is about to launch a big climate change campaign. So please tell us about it.
That's what I was about to say, and thank you. And the event is going to happen on June 9th at 7 o'clock, 7 to 8:15 online. We're hoping to have a really good turnout from Sherith Israel, and after the event, we will hang out in a hangout room online to really think about how Sherith Israel can make this what we want to have happen in terms of climate at Sherith Israel. So on this thing, whatever we call this, handout, it's mentioned, if you want to register, Under the Dome has a link to the registration. So look at your Under the Dome this week or next week, and please register, and please come. We look forward to this. We're learning about what this event's going to be.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's true. The event is only a small piece. Thank you, Helene. And if you are a teen and you like Chinese food, you should come here for the kickoff because we're going to have an event here with Panda Express and watching the event. So look forward to that. Yes, and participating in the event as well. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is, speaking of teens, on Friday, June 17th, in a couple of weeks, we are going to have a senior send-off for our graduating high school seniors. So please come join us for that as well. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you so much to Omri Gal-Oz for his beautiful playing. Thank you to Peter Bonos for his multitasking.
Yes, Peter is all of the technological things at once this evening. Thank you very much for handling them all with great aplomb. We're going to move into the concluding portion of our service now, beginning with Kiddush, which you can find on page 5 in your prayer books. Please rise for Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, porei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu. זיכרון למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת, מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון, הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת. אמן. לחיים. The big reveal. Would you like to make motzah?
Sure.
Please.
Ta-da! Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon.
Back to COVID-safe challah, apparently. Had a few good weeks there.
We'll keep doing that dance as circumstances necessitate. We're all used to it now. We're going to go ahead and conclude our service with Oseh Shalom. There can never be too many prayers for peace in a service, in a Shabbat service, no matter what's going on in the world, but especially now. So please join us in singing Oseh Shalom.
Oseh Shalom bimromav, hoya aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hoya aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Oseh shalom bimromav, hoya aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Oseh shalom bimromav, hoya aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.